Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Diode. D-U-R-V-I-L. I'm a tutor. I tutor I think 10 or more than 10 modules. You can see it in my profile picture or one of my status, or you can come across my flyer, my advertisement flyer. You can see all the modules that I use to help students. But today I'm going to talk about electronics 1. Today I'm going to give a brief overview about electronics 1, which is one of the simple modules around VUT or around even other campus. We are not only VUT students who watch my videos, there's even other campus that you also ask for my videos. For example, UNISA. I have students there, friends who contact me with other students there who sometimes ask my videos. Guys, this module is very simple. For some of you guys, your first year, it's your first time to come across this module or to study this module. Some of you are students who are repeating the module. Maybe you fell because you didn't come across the proper material that that was supposed to help you to pass the module, and you repeat the module. But don't get disappointed, because this semester you're gonna master the module, and if you follow what I'm gonna give you, which advice, if you follow what I'm gonna explain here, I'm telling you, you're gonna pass the module with distinction, and you can fix your academic record. Because most of the time when you fail a module, if you repeat the module, it's better to pass the module with distinction to cover the mistake. So I won't waste a lot of time to talk and everything, but I'm telling you, this module, it's very nice, very easy for you to pass. I'm going to explain this module regarding VUT program, how the way they teach this module at VUT, with chapters and everything. The first thing that you need the electronics device book. Electronics devices book. This is the book that you're gonna use this semester for you to understand and pass the module, because most of the question comes across the book, and most of the explanation in that books have everything that you're gonna need for you to pass this module, except one chapter which is not part of this book. But if you have that book that we call Electronics Fundamental, if you have that book that we call Electronics Fundamental, that book has that chapter which I used to call chapter 0, which is more about electrical 1. If you have that one, don't need to buy this other book, because with this book you can have everything for you to pass electronics 1. So I won't waste a lot of time. I'm going to give you the structure of the module. In that book, in this semester, we're going to start with chapter 0. Chapter 0. Myself, I used to call it chapter 0 because it's not part of the device book that most of students that we have here around FLA. So which is chapter 0? It's more about electrical circuit. This chapter 2. Chapter 0, This is more about chapter 0. In chapter 1, we're going to study what we call Bohr atom. I don't know if I'm right on the atom spelling. I don't know if I'm right. I think Bohr atom. I don't know if I'm right on the spelling, but it's more about chemistry here. more about chemistry. If you love chemistry, you enjoy this part. But if you don't like chemistry, no need to stress because not too much chemistry, just more about theory this part. And on chapter 2, we're going to start what we call characteristic of diode. Characteristics of diode. What is the diode? You're going to ask yourself a question. A diode is an electronic component. It's like, for example, a resistor, which is an electronic component. But in this part, we're going to study what we call a diode, which is also an electronic component. Most of the time, I think we focus more in what we call rectifier diode. In chapter 2, we focus on more what we call rectifier diode. How this diode works, what's important to use this diode, how to bias this diode, how to connect this diode, how to connect this. So we're going to learn about this component, because from electrical 1, even from high school, we've been talking about resistor. Sometimes they represent it like this, resistor. Yeah. So it was more about a resistor. But now they are introducing us to a new component, which is what? The diode. Which is the shape, it's almost like this. Sometimes in real life, it look more about like something like this, and then it's a bound here. This one all the time. In real life, it's more about like this. Okay, I won't waste because we're gonna cover this part. I won't waste a lot of time, like I was saying, it's an overview. And then we have what we call chapter 3. Chapter 3 is more about chapter 3. Also, it's another type of diode that we're gonna study, which is called Zener diode. A Zener diode. In chapter 2, we're going to talk about Zener diode, which also is it a diode? Is it a diode also? But it's different of this one. But everything, it's almost the same. I will explain. Here it was characteristic of diode. I want to introduce us to diode. What's a diode? This is the one we usually deal with, but now this is another type of diode that we call Zener diode. We're going to study in chapter 3 with something like this. Something like this. Something like this is called Zener diode. And then on chapter 4, we're going to introduce us to what we call another component again that we call transistor. And the one that, because even transistor, we have different type of transistor. You can see in chapter 2, there's a characteristic of diode. So we're going to deal with what we call rectifier diode. But in chapter 3, it's also another type of diode, which is what? Zener diode. So here, we're going to study what we call a transistor, because we have other type of transistor. So, but the one that we're going to study here, it's another type of component, which is another type of transistor that we call a BJT, which is a BJT. In other words, bipolar transistor. One study what we call a bipolar transistor. That component looks more a bit like this when you design it. It's more a bit like this. We have 3 polarities, 3 terminals. We have the base, we have the collector, and then we have what? The emitter. No need to panic, we're going to cover all these things. It's just like I said, it's an overview. Now we're going to go on chapter 5, because we stopped in that book. That book I think has 18 chapters. For electronics 1, we focus on chapter 0 up to chapter 5. But the fact in that book we don't have chapter 0, so it's going to be from chapter 1 to chapter 5. So on chapter 5, we're going to study again that transistor, but now we're going to start how to bias. How to bias this BJT transistor, which means bipolar transistor. Some may ask question, what is bias? Because these are new words, these are new terms that you are learning. Bias is more about connecting, how to make connection, how can we connect this transistor in terms of their polarities, in terms of positive and negative. That's what we call bias. How can we bias the thing? But in general, this is what I can say for now, because you haven't reached it, but you understand these words, you understand these terms and everything. So, like I said, it's an overview. I won't waste a lot of time. I'm just giving a clue so that you can start opening your book and start learning the module and start going through the lines and start writing something, because some you have the book or you have the PDF but you don't know where to start. Let's go on chapter 0. I said chapter 0. Chapter 0. I said chapter 0 is more about electrical circuit. It's more about electrical circuit. But you know that when you build an electrical circuit, we can have so many type of components. For example, an inductor, resistor, capacitor, or a coil, or whatever, right? But for us here in electronics 1, the only components that we're going to need, the only component that's going to deal in our circuit, it's going to be a resistor. In other way, the component that we're going to face in circuit, or in those circuits that they will give you this semester, you're only going to face a resistor. You're going to face what we call a DC voltage. Going to face a DC, which is the DC voltage that display a direct current. DC stands for direct current. You're going to find what first AC, which is another type also of voltage. AC, that's gonna conduct or supply with what we call alternative current. These are the 4 components we're going to deal in this chapter 0. Most of the circuit, I can say all the circuit that I'm going to give you to solve or to find voltage or whatever, you're going to use these 3 components. Like I said, it's an overview. I won't waste a lot of time explaining line by line. When we meet in the other class, I will explain everything. So I'm going to take an example of circuit that you may face. You may face a type of circuit like this. I have R1, R2. These are examples of circuit that you can face. I know it's more about simple, but I'm explaining. You will have more difficult than this one because I'm giving an overview. I'm putting you in the line, so I can't start with those difficult things. I'm starting with this one, so we go step by step. We're gonna have, you can face type you can face another type of circuit like this. Maybe something R1, R2, and then For example, something like this type of circuit. You can face also another circuit where you can have a resistor R1, you can have R2, R1, R2, and then you have R3, and then you have R4, and then everything goes to the voltage. You can face this type of circuit, or instead of having this one voltage, this is like this, right? Let me try to draw it the way you draw an electrical one. Yeah, let me use the same thing for you to not get confused. So same way. Yes. Or you can see this voltage, you can combine it with a AC. Instead of having only one, you can have something like this. You can have this voltage like this combined here in the middle here. But we're gonna deal this one after, that we call it superposition. This is superposition voltage. Going to deal with this one later. So where you see one voltage, they can hit DC, they can combine DC with the AC, or they can remove the DC, they just put the AC. Instead of being DC, they just make it to be AC. So we come back there, let's start with this one. They can only draw circuit in three different ways. Rather in series, which is like this, rather in parallel, or rather in series and parallel. These only the three methods or the three ways they can connect a circuit. Rather in series, rather in parallel, or rather in series and parallel. What will be asking you, or which question they're going to ask you here? In this part, they will give you circuit and they will tell you to calculate voltage at a certain point, or voltage for a certain component in the circuit. How did I know this circuit? Why am I calling this circuit a series circuit? Because, is it a series circuit? Because we have two resistors that are connected next to each other, and between these two resistors there is only a line that is connecting them. In another way, between these two resistors there is nothing between them. There's nothing that can stop the current that flows from the source to R1 and R2. There's nothing between these resistors that can avoid. Because if I open, for example, or I put something here, I close here, I put something here, and the current comes, the fact there's something there, I block the current, that current won't flow to this guy. It's gonna flow first here. Or if I have a resistor here, that current, so let me repeat again, that current won't choose just to flow here or to flow here. It will try to split, to give small here and small this side. But the fact I don't have anything this side, is only a line. There's nothing between these two resistors. So if I have a current that flows from the source, it's gonna pass through this guy, because there's nothing, and that same current will touch again R2. Even I have another resistor that I can call R3, that current is gonna go back to R3 and go back to the source. You see what I call, this is what we call series. There's nothing that interfering between the resistors or between the components. The current flow from the source pass through each and every component and go back to the source. So from positive to negative. That's why I said this circuit is what we call a series circuit. So let's see the difference in parallel circuit. In parallel circuit, when you have a current that flows from the source, pass here, when it's gonna arrive there, we have two branches. You can see my current arrived here and we have two branches. And the current won't be because all these two are resistors. The current will not say, I want us to go to R2 or I want us to go to R1. Yes, there's some exceptions. When we're going to talk about short circuit, open circuit, but we're not yet there. For now, we are giving you first the overview. But there's exception. So when the current will come here, the current won't choose like, let me go to R1, let me go to R2. As long as these two resistors are still working perfectly, the current will split into parts. We'll try to give some to this guy and some to this other guy. It's like having children at home. You buy food, you buy food, but the food is not that enough. But you have 2 or 3 children. You can't pick and say you're gonna just give to one and leave your other children. As long as your children, your own blood, you try to share that food with the children. And maybe you're gonna share it in the fact who is older than who can need more food, who has a big stomach and whatever. Sometimes you won't put it equal. You say that this one is more old, then you give him maybe 2 pieces, and these two are too young, then you give them one. Same thing here. You give some to this guy, you give some to this guy, and then you come and combine here the same current that's gonna flow here, come this side, and then go back to the source. I know in terms of food, we don't have that part because we finish, we go to the toilet, so we don't have that part. But it was an example. So the last type of circuit that we can give you what we call series and parallel in the same one. If I check this one, when the current will flow here, this all current will flow through this guy. You can see that it's gonna flow around R1. But if that current arrive there, because we have 2 branches, that same current will do what? Will split into parts. Give some here and give some. So when it's going to give some and give some, that current will flow like this and come and meet with each other there by the node, and then the same current flow again. So in this case, this one is in parallel to this one because they didn't share the same current. This was different. In the other way, this one got the full current from the source. But that current, when it split this side, come again here. They combine that current combine again, flow this side. So which means the same amount from the source is the same amount that flows this side. Because at the end in the circuit, when you the total amount that's starting from the source is the total amount of current that must go back to the source. So when that current flow this side and combine again this side and go back to the source. So this guy and this guy, I can say what? They're in series. Even I put another resistor here, let me call it R5, total current here. So which means this guy, and this R4, they're in series. Thank you. I want to waste, like I said, a lot of time. I wanted to give you just an overview of the module. Thank you for watching the video. If you have a question, you can write on comment, or you can get, if you have my number, you can get my number everywhere. You can ask people to give you my number. You contact me, or maybe if there's something that I didn't explain properly, or you in the way that you wanted, or maybe there's one mistake that I did, you can tell me, and then I will fix so that we move on. Because no one in this world knows everything, right? Yeah, we still continue to learn. In life, we learn and we learn. But I'm telling you, the module is not that difficult for me. On my side, for me, I feel it's very easy. But it's up to you if you want to make it easy or you want to make it hard for you. And it's time to start. Thank you. See you in another video.